The Canadian Human Rights Commission is a disgrace, as you know. Until very recently, they were censors, very un-Canadian, until the Harper government repealed it. Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act gave the so-called Human Rights Commission the power to censor anything on the internet that hurt someone's feelings. Seriously, the wording of that section allowed them to punish anyone for publishing something, quote, likely to promote hatred or contempt, as in likely to cause hurt feelings. But you can hurt feelings by telling the truth or by holding an opinion. You can hurt feelings by doing nothing, actually. We all know people who fake it, who pretend to be offended at the slightest thing. Well, the Human Rights Commission literally turned hurt feelings into a federal case and prosecuted people viciously under that law for decades until it was finally repealed. There are still many odious powers that remain with the Commission, and you can imagine if you're in the grievance business, if you're in the business of taking offense at things, if you get paid, if you get your budgets by finding something to bitch about, odds are you are going to find something to bitch about. Had the Harper government been truly conservative, they would have shut down this viper's nest, not just the censorship part of it, but they didn't. Well, look at this press release issued on Tuesday by the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission is like a court. By the way, it's called a quasi-judicial tribunal. It has court-like powers, even to fine people, to make other orders to affect their lives. It has court-like procedures. So listen to what this supposedly nonpartisan, supposedly judicious chairman of the Human Rights Commission put in a press release yesterday, and I quote, "Repair the erosion of human rights in Canada," unquote. Hang on, human rights in Canada have not been eroded. The laws don't erode. They're voted on by elected members of Parliament. Parliament writes the laws, and the Human Rights Commission applies the laws. That is a separation of powers. Like courts, they don't get to write the rules, they apply the rules. But here we see that the Human Rights Commission doesn't feel limited by constitutional customs. They're a kangaroo court. They demand more power to go after people they don't like. And they've been seething against Stephen Harper and the Conservatives for 9 years, and now they finally get to shout it to the world. I'll give you the details of their demands in a moment, but first, this whole thing is written by Marie-Claude Landry, the Chief Commissioner. Have you ever heard of her before? Of course you haven't. She's some Quebec lawyer, an appointee. She wasn't elected to this position. She's an appointed civil servant in charge of a quasi-court, and yet she has arrogated unto herself the power, the audacity to say that she doesn't have enough weapons to go after Canadians, and that Parliament's will is illegitimate, and that any changes to the law haven't been democratic, they've been erosions or something, like an accident. Here, let me read to you the first line from her press release. Marie-Claude Landry, Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission, congratulates Prime Minister-designate Justin Trudeau. She's thrilled. She's in love. She's as partisan as they come. It's gross that this woman was appointed by the Conservatives. Shows how unconservative they were in their judicial appointments. I'm sure Trudeau loves this praise because he's a narcissist and he's a leftist activist. A real Prime Minister of any party would immediately fire this woman for not knowing what the proper place of a non-partisan civil servant. You don't endorse, you don't make personal statements. But look at her actual demands, made in her own name with no authority. Quote, I call on our newly elected Parliament to begin repairing the erosion of human rights in Canada and to move swiftly to repeal legislation and reverse policies that promote discrimination and prejudice. No one should live in fear because of who they are or because they have a belief that is not shared by the majority. She says specifically, quote, Parliament should, ... and I'll stop you there. Do you see the problem? She's telling Parliament what Parliament should do. She's telling MPs what to do. She works for MPs. They pass the law and they tell her what to do. She's never won an election. She thinks she's the boss of Parliament. Here's her to-do list that I didn't get to. Here, I'll just read a few of them. First one, rewrite and rename the Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act to remove any insinuation that certain religions are a threat to Canadian society, unquote. Well, it is true that certain religions, radical Islam, is a threat to society, as we've seen, but if you actually read this law, no religion is mentioned, only barbaric cultural practices like child marriage, for example. Honor killings is something that's in question here as well. But Empress Landry knows how racist MPs are. So she wants to change the law. Here's another one of her demands, quote, immediately convene a national inquiry into missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls and develop a national action plan, unquote. Now that's a police matter, that's a courts matter, maybe it's an Aboriginal affairs matter, but who is she, whose mandate is to apply laws written by MPs, who is she to tell MPs what to do in other areas of policy, other jurisdictions? Is this just her personal blog here? Like her Facebook page where she just mouths off about the world? Does she have advice for Parliament on foreign policy, perhaps? On taxation? I'm not even kidding. She says Parliament must, and I quote, ensure that all people in Canada have access to safe drinking water and adequate housing, unquote. Oh, just that, eh? What does that mean? Under what authority? With what budget? Who will pay for adequate housing? Who will define adequate housing? Is this urban elite leftist lawyer saying that she has the jurisdiction to barge onto any Indian reserve and tell the local chiefs and councils how to spend their money? Is she suddenly an expert on housing or Aboriginal affairs? And more to the point, if you have a case before the Canadian Human Rights Commission that touches on any of these matters in her press release, can you possibly believe that you will have a neutral and objective hearing? It would be like some criminal judge railing against light sentences for shoplifters, demanding Parliament jail shoplifters, and then saying, okay, now I'm going to sit in judgment of an accused shoplifter. These were kangaroo courts to begin with, but how could anyone possibly expect a fair hearing before this activist nut? Oh, my favorite one. She demands that MPs, quote, protect the rights of all women to express their religion, unquote. What does that mean? Are there women who can't pray in Canada? Are there women who can't go to church or synagogue or mosque? Of course not. But what she really means, but doesn't quite have the courage to say, is that she thinks women should have the right to wear a Muslim face mask, the face obscuring niqab, wherever and whenever they want, in citizenship court, in voting booths, both of which are the law in Canada right now. But hey, why not also, if you're a judge, why not a judge wearing a face mask? Why not a policeman wearing a face mask? I mean, why not a bank teller having the right to wear a niqab? Why not having the right to go into a jewelry store with a face mask on? Now, Empress Laundrie has shown she cannot be trusted to execute the will of Parliament. She has shown she cannot be trusted to be neutral and objective. But look, that's no surprise. We've known the Human Rights Commissions were illiberal, un-Canadian for years. I've known that since 2006, when I was first charged under their censorship provisions for showing the Danish cartoons of Mohammed. I actually don't blame a leftist hack for being a leftist hack. I blame Stephen Harper's late Conservatives for not cleaning out these stables for 9 full years of government and leaving them behind for Justin Trudeau, who will surely now put them to brutal use, either with Laundrie or his own hand-picked patronage appointee. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.